share that with Chuck. So I tell you what we're going to do here. And if you have any questions, and by the way, Angela, I know you've sent me your last assignment, and we're in good shape. And Mindy, I've got to get some grading done. So I did some the other day, but I haven't got it entered in grade books, so I don't know what I've got missing. So, and Chuck, I know I'm recording this, so you're going to get to see this too here. I'm going to send you an email that I need you all to do the evaluations because we're doing this Zoom stuff new. They had planned on us doing the evaluations in paper form rather than electronic form, and there's got to be a process that goes through to do it electronically. So we can't do it electronically. So you're going to receive in the mail a paper evaluation for both politics and for superintendency, and I need you to really please send that back in because our only other choice is what I think Dr. Finch and Dr. Quinter do is they're requiring people to come into Missouri State to do it. And I was like, can't we mail them? And they said, as long as they promise that they will mail them back in. So if you want to drive to Springfield, feel free, and we can meet in person and we can fill out the forms there. But otherwise, I'm going to assume that you would rather stay in Purdy and Neosho and Carthage and just mail them back in, but they are extremely important, and the university gets very cranky if we do not distribute evaluations and if they do not come back into the appropriate people. So it will come postage paid, and you'll need to mail it back into Judy Campbell, and then she'll make sure she gets it back into the system so that you can have your and again, you'll get two. You'll get one for politics and you'll get one for superintendency. So do them separately because you'll need to do both because they go into different systems on the evaluation plan. So there's on that. So what we're going to do is we're now talking about tribal leadership and going into stage 4. And to be candid with you, this is really the bread and butter. In reflection, I wish we'd spent more time on this and less time on the earlier ones, but because this is really where the leadership component comes to leading a school organization. And one thing that the dynamic about the way the book is written is that, of course, much of it is centered on business, and it's applicable to education, but sometimes we have to dig a little deeper in order to get there. But just as a reminder here, let me get this all shared out here, is that we've talked about the tribal stages up through stage 3, which is I'm great and you're not. And again, that's the most common. Stage 3 is the most common. Roughly about half of organizations are at that lone warrior, I'm great, you're not mentality as far as the way they operate in leadership and also the way they work as far as collaborating or not collaborating with each other. And of course, we've gone through stage 2, the apathetic victim there, my life sucks. And hopefully you don't have to worry about stage 1 in an education setting. But, you may. I mean, I don't want to pull something just out of thin air, but you hear about the issue this week down at Ava schools where you have this unfortunate, and of course it was in the middle of the night. It wasn't in a school setting, but it was 1:30 in the morning or something like that, where two students get into a fight on the parking lot, and one shoots the other, and then the student shoots themselves. Every time I hear something like that, I always sort of reflect on what stage that person was in, and the young man that shot the other man and then shot himself on the parking lot down there at Ava schools. And you guys aren't in the Springfield market, so you may not have known about that, but I guess it was Sunday night, Monday morning, on the school parking lot at Ava High School, a young man had gotten into a fight with another young man and shot the other young man who is still living and had to have surgery and things like that. And then the young man turned the gun on himself and shot himself. So you may have to deal with those type of issues down there in stage 1, stage 2, but let's hope it is most of it, unfortunately, is going to be with students. So now we're talking about, we're trying to get our organization to, for lack of a better term, work together to see our own potential and greatness by working together. And so we're trying to get people beyond that stage of, I'm great, look at the things I'm doing, to get to that point of where we're melding them into a collaborative culture where they're working together. Now, I know this is a boring, terrible pedagogy here, and if Robin calls in, I'll stop it. And we're only going to watch about the first 10 minutes here. It's not going to be long. But it was actually, this is a video of the gentleman that was, or the organization that was discussed in the book, IDEO. And it's a design organization. And like I said, this is a clip from 60 Minutes. And we're just going to, here, I forgot, I got to stop sharing so I can reshare to make sure that I click all the buttons so that you can watch video. This is a discussion of how they work at that organization that's discussed in the book, IDEO. And as we listen to it, I did the wrong screen share, sorry about that. As we listen to it, I want you to think about how this way of working could work in a school setting. And so let's watch this clip from 60 Minutes here.
Tonight, we're going to introduce you to one of the most innovative.
Give me just a second. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. I don't know how big your screen is, but it may be too small. Here we go.
Tonight, we're going to introduce you to one of the most innovative thinkers of our time. He's a man who has had an enormous impact on our everyday lives. David Kelley is the founder of the Silicon Valley global design firm IDEO. His company has created thousands of breakthrough inventions, including the first computer mouse from Apple, the stand-up toothpaste tube, and a better Pringle for Procter & Gamble. IDEO may be the most influential product design company in the world. Kelley was a longtime friend and colleague of Steve Jobs, and he is a pioneer in something known as design thinking, an innovative approach that incorporates human behavior into design.
The big thing about design thinking is it allows people to build on the ideas of others. Instead of just having this one thread, you think about it, I come up with an idea and then somebody from somewhere else says, oh, that makes me think we should do this. And then we could do that. And then you get to a place that you just can't get to in one mind.
If you follow David Kelley around IDEO, you can see how he has infused that thinking into the legendary Palo Alto firm he founded more than 20 years ago. Breakthrough ideas happen every day here. The key to unlocking creativity at IDEO may be their unorthodox approach to problem solving. They throw a bunch of people with different backgrounds together in a room. So you're in the business end?
Yep. My background's in software engineering.
Journalism.
Aerospace engineer.
Doctors, opera singers, and anthropologists, for example, and get them to brainstorm. You got to have a certain culture. You got to have collaboration. You got to have diversity. You got to have an anthropologist and a business person and an engineer and a computer scientist. All of those kinds of.
You got it. That's the hard part. Is the cultural thing of having a diverse group of people and having them be good at building on each other's ideas.
They encourage wild ideas and visualize solutions by making actual prototypes. But the main tenet is empathy for the consumer, figuring out what humans really want by watching them.
If you want to improve a piece of software, all you have to do is watch people using it and see when they grimace and then correlate that to where they are in the software, and you can fix that, right? And so the thing is to really build empathy. Try to understand people through observing them.
In other words, their experience will communicate what you need to focus on.
Yep, exactly.
It is a concept that had its genesis in 1978 when Kelley and some Stanford pals took the notion of mixing human behavior and design and started the company that would eventually become IDEO. One of their first clients was the owner of a fast-growing personal computer manufacturer by the name of Steve Jobs.
He made IDEO because he was such a good client. We did our best work for him. We became friends, and he'd call me at 3 o'clock in the morning.
At 3 a.m.?
Yeah, we were both bachelors, so he knew he could call me, right? So he'd call me at 3 o'clock, and he just, like with no preamble, hey, it's Steve. First I knew if it was 3 o'clock in the morning, it was him. And there's no preamble, and he'd just start. He said, you know those screws that we're using to hold the two thing on the inside? I mean, he was deep into every aspect of things.
Kelley's company helped design dozens of products for Apple, including Apple III and Lisa, and the very first Apple mouse, a descendant of which is still in use today.
He said to us, you know, for $17, he gave us that number, $17, I want you to make a mouse that we're going to use in all of our computers. So What happened here was we're trying to figure out how to make, so you move your hand and how you make the thing move on screen. So at first we thought, I got to make it really accurate. You know, like when we move the mouse an inch, it's got to move exactly an inch on the screen. And then after we prototyped it, we realized it doesn't matter at all. Your brain's in the loop. The whole thing was make it intuitive for the human. In fact,
But even after they solved that monumental problem, Jobs still wasn't satisfied.
and so he didn't like the way the ball sounded on the table. So we had to rubber coat the ball. Well, rubber coating the ball was a huge technical problem because you can't have any seams. You got to get it just right. And so, you know, it'd just be one thing like that.
Suppose Steve had said to you, I'd like to have a ball that's not steel but rubber coated, and you said, no, you can't do that, Steve. What would he say?
Hello, who joined us by phone?
Hi, this is Claire.
Oh, hi, Claire. I haven't heard from Robin Ritchie yet, so here, we'll just give her just a couple minutes, and if she doesn't come on here in a couple of minutes, I'll let you jump off, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So, ladies, here we've watched a little bit here about IDEO and how they run their organization and the way that and there's more details of it, but we've gotten the gist of it there as far as the basic way that they work in order to solve the problems. What problems or benefits could we see that type of culture where you're getting a large group of different people together to look at a common issue? How could that work, or what problems would we have in an educational setting?
I think that is what, if we think about education today and where we're going in our classrooms, I feel like that is what we want our students to do. I feel like we want to be able to present them with a problem based on the learning that's taking place in our classroom, and then be able to collaborate and communicate and build on one another and create those ideas for problem solving and really I like that he said having empathy for the customer or empathy for you know, who their decisions will affect. However, I think some implications that we have is that most of our teachers are not trained that way. And so it is very hard for teachers to, I feel like we're getting better at that, but I feel like it is very hard for teachers to allow that to occur, to not have such a tight control over what the kids are doing and what they bring back. I feel like that would be the implication, is there's this division between what we want our students to do, but as teachers, what we feel comfortable allowing them to do.
Yeah, can you give me a specific example there, Mindy, of maybe when that has actually played out where a teacher was really uncomfortable, or like I said, maybe it's not uncomfortable, maybe they're just not prepared to work in that situation?
So one example that I have that I don't think that Purdy is the lone district to experience this is bringing devices into the classroom and students having that device and being able to, and having that technology at their fingertips. So as the teacher says something and maybe they don't know about it, the kid is opening up the iPad and Googling and to get the information instead of waiting for what the teacher has to say. I feel like that has been an issue over the past few years of districts bringing in that technology, letting students have that technology at their fingertips to enhance the learning in the classroom. It should not take the place of the learning. And I feel like that is a very uncomfortable situation. Teachers are not comfortable. Some teachers are not comfortable with that. They want to know exactly what the kid is looking at all the time. It is a really uncomfortable situation, especially for teachers who have, usually for teachers that have been in the profession for many years, that are closer to the end of their career versus closer to the beginning of their career. So that would be one example that I would throw out that we've seen, and it's easy for those teachers that are uncomfortable just to say you're not allowed to use that device except on homework or on projects, you need to have it put away. When really, if we are throwing those real world problems out for the students, and we want them to communicate and collaborate, and we allow them to research and explore and like look for prototypes, whatever that might be, that device can enhance what they can come up with. But that is an uncomfortable situation for some classroom teachers.
Great example. Hey, Claire, I haven't heard back from Robin, so I'm just going to let you hang up and you go on about your business, and we'll talk at you later, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Thanks for trying. Okay, good deal.
All right, thank you.
You know,
Okay, bye-bye.
another, and this is just my observation of in school business where I see groups that are as close to anybody about using this type of, we'll call it stage 4, but it could be this innovative design concept that they use here at IDEO, is special ed people. Special ed people are used to working in multidisciplinary teams where they're used to having the nurse there. They're used to having teachers there. They're used to having they're used to working through problems in that multidisciplinary mode. And I don't know that teachers that come into those settings feel as comfortable there, because that may be the only experience that they have at working that way, where they're hearing input from a nurse and they're hearing input from the teacher's aide, and it's almost it's clearly everybody on equal footing. That's not really what I'm getting at here, but it's everybody in the room is contributing ideas focused on that particular student in that case, and so they get comfortable in working in that environment. And so I found that special ed people tend to be very good at this concept of getting everybody around the table and looking at something differently. And, I had a student one time that when we were talking about this back in a couple of semesters ago, and she said, we used the same process on speeding up the lunch line at our school. And basically they got a multidisciplinary group that she said it included everybody. It included cafeteria workers, it included teachers, and it included everybody. And they said, we just went in one day and just watched the lunchroom and how it was the flow. They having backups, weren't getting kids through the lunchroom quick enough. And then after they sat there and watched, they all came back and just threw out ideas about how we can speed kids through the lunch line. Anyway, they used this process of everybody looking at a common issue and everybody building on each other's ideas to resolve that. And she didn't even know where that came up with. But again, the idea of something as simple as how do we speed up the lunch line, having a number of people look at it, watch at it from different perspectives, and then throwing in and building on each other's ideas to come up with a resolution. And she said that was how they developed this plan to go through and do that. So, Angela, do you have anything on this?
Well, it's interesting because this subject really hits home, especially with something that we've experienced in the last year at Carthage at the high school, because prior to last year, well, back up. 2 words that really stood out to me in the video you were showing was the collaboration and diversity, and how important it is that you have those 2 things come together to be able to look to the future, to make changes, to have discussions. And as far as our school is concerned, and whenever I think about what we went through, specifically with teachers and teacher collaboration, we used to have time set aside. It was late start Fridays, and every Friday morning our groups would get together and we would have collaboration time built in. And whenever we switched up the whole school schedule, our late start Friday that had been in place for 15 years was thrown out the door. And the idea was that there would be time found, not set aside, but found in order to replace that time. Well, we just completed our first year without late start. And ironically, we tried to make a pretty big change regarding seminar at the end of the day, and making some changes to it because it needs to be refined and looked at. But what was happening was there was a very small group of teachers that had committed some time to looking at possibilities, presenting those possibilities to the staff. The follow-up meetings to that included so few teachers that there were so few involved in the decision making, but yet there was all this feedback, negative feedback from teachers. But those weren't the teachers that were attending the meetings and trying to help come up with ideas. And there was no time set aside that the principal could get, staff collaboration to try to come up with a better idea. And it was just not successful. Yeah. Needless to say, there are no changes being made to seminar, which needs to happen. But we ended the year with, we have to find time, have it in the schedule, set aside, whether it's during planning periods or whatever, for collaboration, because that's one thing we didn't have. And there was no positive movement in the school as far as making changes that need to be made because of the lack of collaboration.
Well, let me ask you this, Angela, just playing devil's advocate. Is this lack of collaboration something that could have been resolved with technology or not?
No.
Okay.
No, because
like exchanging emails.
I think it could have been initiated, but all of those naysayers would have, unless required, of course. I still don't think that a lot of the naysayers didn't want their name attached to it. They weren't committing kind of an open mind to it, whereas if you could sit down and have discussions about it, I think they would have been more open about it. But they want to talk, around the corner to somebody else, or I just don't think that they would have spoken up even on technology. But I think sitting in the same room and having discussions and everybody having an understanding where each person is coming from, I think it would have gotten a lot further. And that time is being built in this year. And I know that they're hoping now to make the changes to seminar by January. So we've got this time in the fall where people are supposed to be using collaboration in order to help come up with the problems or solutions. So I guess we will see if the one-on-one collaboration has been helpful, or if technology could be used, because I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Well, the reason I throw that out there is because, and I'll just typically say stage 2, stage 3 people, they're always advocating for, let's do this through technology. Do we all have to get together and do this? They're, and the one thing that's important to remember about stage 3 people, those stage 3 people are, I'm great, you're not. They're really always concentrate on time. And so they see things that involve long drawn out discussions on an issue as a time waster. Is that you are wasting, in the back of their mind, you are wasting my valuable time by doing all this silly discussion amongst each other. And I know the answer to this. We don't have to beat this, to death. And so they always have that sort of dynamic playing in the back. And so when you have these diverse groups, some people always are pushing for technology. It's, can't we just share an email and we comment? We have a shared Google document and we all throw our ideas on it and things like that. And of course, that's exactly what David Kelly and people that like at IDEO are talking about. That is not what we need. In a different video that I have of him, he's comparing about, would you hire someone just based on their resume and an exchange of emails? Well, you probably would. That you probably wouldn't just look at data that's being presented to you in an electronic format. You would always want to have a dialogue with them. And of course, the authors of this book are always they mentioned several times advocating for this 10-member panel for interview committees. Now, I don't know. I know some schools do that, but it's probably still relatively uncommon to have a large, diverse group involved in an interview process to see that dynamic and to see how they would fit into, problem solving as a group is what we're trying to get to on this. And so so that's interesting that really probably the first leader of a school around here. And at the time when he came, I knew a number of people that worked it's Stephen Kleinsmith, who's superintendent out at Nixa. And when Dr. Kleinsmith came to Nixa, a bunch of his administrative team were friends of mine that I knew. And I can remember and I didn't know him at all. I mean, he came from Iowa or Nebraska. I can't remember where Kleinsmith came from. And we were talking about the way his leadership style. And he was really the first superintendent in the area that had, I think he calls it his leadership council. He doesn't have assistant superintendents. They have directors. And it was just a different vision of the way the organizational structure of a school district would be when Kleinsmith came to Nixa. And one of the things that some of my friends that were administrators at Nixa when he came in, and I can remember them complaining about, was about every issue or everything that we did involved lots of discussion and talking and lots of people at the table rather than a few people at the table. And so, like, it's not uncommon for Kleinsmith, and I don't know, I haven't been as connected to it here the last few years, so I don't know. But especially at that time, was that he would have a custodian at the table. He would have a secretary at the table. And even though they're discussing education issues, he would have a very diverse, larger group at the table when they were having these discussions. And that's very much what we're getting at here, is that you can be talking about things that we need to do in school or things that we need to change at our school, and the information being brought to the table by the cafeteria worker or by the secretary can be very, very important. We all tend to live in our own world, and it's all about perspective. That's one of the things we talked about early on, about the perspective of where you are in an organization. And sometimes the comment that a teacher's aide has is really important in the decision that we make here, because as, for example, the principal or the superintendent or the teacher, I have one perspective, but sometimes there are other perspectives that can be much more powerful as far as the ultimate discussion. By the way, I just got a text from Robin, and she says she's going to call right now. So I know it's just three of us, but we'll still talk to Robin, so she should be calling in here in just a second. So again, just thinking about that dynamic of how we get people to work together in a collaborative nature, and that part where David Kelly talks about we come up with one idea and then we build on that idea, then we build on, we're building on each other's ideas. And in his group, it's really unique because, I mean, they're having, and again, they're trying to design things like a computer mouse. But they'll have a cook, and they'll have a astrophysicist, and they'll have a English as a second language teacher. They'll have this huge diversity of people, and we're talking about a computer mouse. Well, none of them as individuals probably have any knowledge of how to generate or create a computer mouse, but together, by building on the conversation and dialogue between each other, they can get to a point where they can build a better product. And I know that when we're talking about how we impact kids, we're not talking about a product, we're not talking about a computer mouse, but in that dynamic of when they say we are having empathy for the customer, how many times do we sit there and actually watch, and technology is a good one that we talked about here, how often do we sit there and just watch what kids are doing with technology from a diverse group of watchers? And so we've got this idea of this is how we want to push out technology. And hold on just a second. I got to send Robin a text. She doesn't have her meeting ID, so hold on. Now we'll see if she can get him. But so if we're considering the student our customer and having empathy for the student, it's a group of teachers, the best one to have in the discussion to try to develop empathy with a student. And if not, who is? My issue on that was, I think you've heard me talk about this before, is that sometimes a group of math teachers are not the best people to sit around a table and talk about what we should be doing in the math department, because they, by the nature of them being math teachers, makes it difficult for them to empathize with the position of a student in a math class. Hey, Robin, can you hear us?
Hey, John Turner, I can hear you just fine.
Good deal. That's everybody. That's Robin Ritchie on the phone. And Robin, I must admit, we've got a smaller group than we originally thought we had. We have a number of people going to, they've got professional development or curriculum meetings or things like that. So there's only 3 of us on the phone today, but we appreciate you calling in anyway.
You bet. Happy to do that.
So everybody, this is Robin Ritchie. And Robin Ritchie was my boss. She was my superintendent at Dallas County Schools up at Buffalo. And I can't, how many, did we work together 6 years, Robin? Was that right? I can't remember.
I think 5 years. I was there for 6. You left a year before I did.
Okay, good.
You were there for 6, but you were there a year ahead of me. So
yeah. Okay, well, I couldn't remember whether there 5 or 6. But anyway, when I went to Buffalo, I was with Gary Arthod, who is our department. Well, she's just retired now. Our department chairperson, Tammy Arthod's retired. But anyway, I worked with Gary Arthod for a year, and then Robin came in. And so, Robin, why don't you well, here, let me do this first, Robin. And I realize you can't see us, so we're talking on the phone. But let me have Angela and Mindy. They're going to introduce themselves a little bit. They're the 2 that are here on the line with me today. So, Angela, why don't you tell Robin just a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Robin. My name's Angela Holman.
Hi, Angela.
Hello. My name's Angela Holman, and I teach high school at Carthage, Missouri, in the Southwest.
Okay.
And I just finished my 16th year and am starting my 17th year. And I got my master's in 2005, and I'm now, after this class, going to be 6 hours away from being finished with my specialist.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Mindy. Wait a second, Mindy. You're still muted. Okay, go again, Mindy.
Hi, Robin. My name is Mindy Gates. I am at the Purdy School District down in Southwest Missouri. I am an administrator there or here. I was an instructional coach here for 2 years prior to that, and then I taught 3rd grade at Cassville for 10 years. And I started the specialist program this spring.
And Robin, just so you'll know, I'm recording this conversation, and I'm going to share the recording with the other students in class. So I just want to let you know that you are being recorded, but I promise I'll only share it with class.
All right. Very good. No
Robin,
blackmail included, huh?
Yeah, that's it. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit so they'll know about your career too, Robin?
All right. Well, I'm Robin Ritchie, and this year will mark my 30th in the field of education as I begin it. Hard for me to believe that I have been a superintendent. This will make my 13th year as a superintendent. Is that crazy or what for somebody who said I'd never want to be a superintendent? So never say never, gang. I began my career in Southeast Missouri. I am a SEMO graduate. I have all of my degrees from there. I was an elementary teacher for 11 years in Southeast in a little small rural farming community called Bernie. That's where I graduated from high school, went back to teach there, taught for 11 years a variety of grades. Kindergarten, 1st grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. So then I became an elementary principal there at Bernie for 6 years and moved into the superintendent's position and served 5 years in the Bernie School District as their superintendent, and then moved to Buffalo to work with John Turner for the last 6 years. And in 2015 was lucky enough to make a move as the superintendent here in Kabul, the Kabul School District, and am enjoying my time here. I've just completed year 1 as the superintendent here in Kabul, and we're looking forward to year 2. So that's a little bit about me.
Hey, Robin, this first question is one we were just discussing here within the last 30 minutes, and I promise you I didn't do it on purpose, but it's something that I would ask any superintendent. So I don't want you to think I'm giving you loaded questions because our offices were next door to each other for 5 years. But one of the questions we came up with, we were talking about the role of the school board and the role of individual school board members. And would you talk a little bit about how you handle issues with school board members that may be stepping outside of their particular role in a school organization, or when they might act, for example, as an individual with more authority than they should have?
Sure. Had lots of experience with that. Most school board members are truly good people and very interested in doing what's best for the school, but a lot of times they don't realize what their role as a school board member is. So I think first and foremost, good professional development and training for school board members on a regular basis. You know, those few hours that they get at the beginning when they first become a school board member should just be the beginning. And as a superintendent, it is our job to guide and direct the board where professional development is concerned, and to try to make that available. And I think a lot of times an expert is somebody who comes from outside of the realm of your local district. So if you can pull in someone, you know, MASSA has great presenters, MSBA has great presenters, and so I think professional development is one of the keys to that. Secondly, I would say that when those issues begin to arise, a good school board president is also instrumental in helping you with that. You know, you have to remember as a superintendent, those 7 individuals are your boss. And it is certainly not, we don't want to be in a position of telling our boss what they should or should not be doing. And so sometimes it can be tricky to guide and direct them and encourage them to rein it in. And your board president, you need to feel comfortable with him or with her and in sharing what is going on with specific school board members and allowing them, if anybody has to be the bad guy, it needs to be the school board president who is talking individually with those members, reminding them of what their roles are, and reminding them of how it should have been handled if they've erred outside of their roles and responsibilities. So those are some things that I can think of off the top of my head in handling those kinds of situations.
Now, Robin, I think you said you'd been superintendent 13 years, and I think you've been a superintendent in 3 different school districts. Over that tenure, looking back over all those years of being superintendent, how is the job of being a superintendent changed?
Well, it's certainly not much of a managerial role anymore. I think that we, especially if you're in a small district and you don't have as much help as you do in a larger district, you're wearing a lot of different hats outside of just simple management. And I guess to that, when we talk about that, we're meaning instructional leadership, curriculum. You know, I think the key to being a good superintendent is hiring good people and letting them do their jobs. So I think the main change I've seen is that we veer away from just management type activities, and you truly are the instructional leader of your district, and that's the most important job that you have. Sometimes we feel like it's just finance or paperwork, and while we do a lot of that, most importantly is keeping our focus on instruction and good instructional programs for students, and assisting our teachers in having what they need to be able to be successful and have our students have improved performance.
Hey, Robin, and you may have touched on this a bit, but what is something or some things that you think a general teacher, or a regular teacher in your school district, has no idea that the superintendent has to do?
Well, you know, as I think back to being a teacher myself, each rung of the ladder as I've climbed up it, going from being a teacher to a principal, your perspective certainly changes, and you really have no idea what those folks, whether it's a building principal or a central office administrator, what their job truly entails. I'm trying to think back that as a teacher, I would have had no idea. You know, school finance is something that it's as broad as it is deep, and Dr. Turner likes to say it's like reading the tea leaves, and he's right about that. I think that probably the teacher that's in the classroom has no idea of the stresses just of school finance, and if you're in a formula-dependent school, like many of us are, the stress of that being so unpredictable with state funding and the effect that has. can make for some long nights sometimes. And so I guess that's one area that I would say, until you've lived through it, that you really have no idea of. And dealing with boards is probably another thing that most teachers don't really realize, the challenges that you face in dealing with school boards sometimes. Those are two areas I can think of off the top of my head, John.
And I'm not asking you to get too personal here, Robin, but what's the worst part of the job?
Well, to me, the finance part of it, the unpredictable part of it, if you could count on a certain amount of funding every year and know that without a shadow of a doubt, and not have to worry about withholdings, and really the 13 years that I have done the job, that's been the case. There's been a lot of situations with state funding, particularly, where it was unpredictable. We've seen a lot of federal funding fade away as well. And so the challenge of finding the resources that you need financially to support a school district is probably to me, one of the toughest, because some of it you just have so little control over. And of course, I would say just the political nature of the superintendency itself can also be a challenge. I think you just have to remember that at the end of the day, you have to be able as an individual to lay your head on the pillow and sleep at night, and know that whatever those recommendations are that you have made, that you've made them, and then if the board chooses to go in a different direction, then of course it's our job to follow the wishes of the board, and that's not always easy. I think that's a very tough part of the job, when you're in it day in and day out, and a board may not always follow the recommendations that you give. Typically 95 to 98% of the time they do, but we've all been in those situations where they choose to go a different direction, and in your heart of hearts you may believe that that's totally the wrong decision, but you learn to step back and take a deep breath and to follow the directives of the board, bottom line.
Robin, it's just probably ironic that you and I would work together for 5 years, and I came to Buffalo from Kabul, and then after I left, we ended up going to Kabul. So I know Kabul well, and we know Buffalo well together. We knew it at different times. But you're the new gal in Kabul. You didn't know a whole lot about Kabul there, and you've just completed your first year in as being superintendent there in Kabul, with probably relatively little knowledge about the community. What's the biggest challenge of being the new superintendent in town?
It has been a terrific year. I love Kabul. They have made me feel so welcome. I can't tell you how many times as I've been out visiting in the community and been a part of various organizations, whether it's the Chamber or the Kiwanis or whatever, people will say, "We're so glad you're here," and "We're so glad to have you. We're so glad you chose us." And so that always makes you feel good when you hear that. Kabul reminds me a lot of my own hometown in Southeast Missouri. There are a lot of similarities. We do have a high poverty rate here, but I'll tell you that this is such a supportive community. If there is a need and the community gets wind of it, there is somebody somewhere that steps up to fill the gap. And that has been impressive. They're a very united community behind the school. And we both know, John, and those of you in other school districts probably know, that it's not like that everywhere. Sometimes it's hard to get that unitedness. That was one of the challenges, I think, in Dallas County, that when you have a county school, you have so many small little communities that make up the district, and sometimes they become segmented, and then sometimes it's hard to get that unity. So it has been a blessing to be back in a little bit smaller school, where the community is united behind the school district. And so it's been a really good year. It's been a really smooth year, and I have a really great board here. They're very laid back, and I feel like that I can and truly do my job, and it's been good.
Great. Well, ladies, you're coming up next. I've got one more question for Robin, but then I'm going to ask the ladies to ask you a question too. Robin, so how do you keep current? How do you keep on top of things? How do you tell me about if I'm a new superintendent, how am I going to keep informed about what's going on? So what are your sources of information?
Well, you can already tell from the answers we've talked about in prior questions that I think professional development is very, very important. And even though this is year 30 for me, I still think that it's very important for me to get out and go to as many different professional opportunities, professional development opportunities that I can. So I try to attend, things like the state superintendent's meeting. I don't think I have missed one MASA finance meeting. They do one in the fall and one in the spring, and now they do those online. That's another way the superintendency has changed. You used to have to go to Jeff City for the finance meetings and for the first time ever in my 13 years, Chris Straub is not going to be part of that this year, so that's going to be really strange. Ken Cook is actually helping out with that meeting, John, one of your old cronies from way back. And so that's going to be an interesting change. But I think getting out, the way you stay on top of things is to get out and to go to as many meetings as you can. Of course, developing a network. I believe that school people are just the very best people. I can't, outside of the clergy, I don't think there is any more important job or any better people in their field than there are with education. And so if you have a question, you can't be afraid to ask it, to develop that network of fellow superintendents. You also have great advisors in professional organizations like MASA and MSBA. Reach out to those kind of folks. And of course, we get a lot of emails and a lot of information through those professional organizations, so it's important to try to stay well read. And those are probably the primary ways I can think of that you stay on top of things. Now, from a community standpoint, as a superintendent, it's very important to be out and about and be visible in the community and attend as many things as you can. And I don't think that ever changes. No matter how many years you're in a district, you need to be out and about. So if you can become a member of a community organization like Kiwanis or Rotary or Lions Club, I try to attend as many Chamber of Commerce meetings as I can. There's a foundation here in Kabul, CDF, Kabul Development Foundation, that I've been invited to attend their meetings. And so as many things outside of school activities. I attend a lot of school activities, and it's been interesting, the reaction from the community to that I think that's appreciated, and I think it's important. I think that's as big a part of the job as what we do during the daytime with the paperwork and the managerial type of functions that we have.
Sounds great. Angela, what questions do you have?
I actually had just a couple of questions for you. The first one, I know you talked about how important professional development is with the board and guiding and in order to help guide them. And so my first question is, so if your board's going to go through some type of professional development, does this occur like after your scheduled board meeting? Do you schedule additional time for them all to get together? And I can't imagine, if that's the case, how difficult it might be coordinating schedules, that sort of thing. So just kind of the logistics of how or when would you have the time on top of everything else that the board is doing other than the monthly meetings?
I have found that if you can do something on site, MSBA does 2 conferences a year in tandem with MASA, and those are probably the best conferences I've been to, and I try to take those board members who can get away from their daily jobs out off-site to Tantera, to those meetings, and they're excellent, but a lot of times you're lucky if you can get 1 or 2. You're certainly typically not going to get a full board that can attend those. So I have found the most successful training to be those that you can hold right here in your school district, and we typically set aside, I like to do at least 1 a semester. Now, last year was my first year here, and we did 1 first semester from MSBA. We did the roles and responsibilities of the board. We had trainers come here, and then Kelly Hopkins was on site to do Sunshine Law, which is something you could actually do every year if you wanted to. We didn't get 1 in second semester like I wish we had, but we set aside a separate meeting evening, and I usually provide supper goodies, and we try to keep it to around just no longer than a couple of hours, so approximately an hour per session. And I typically ask for their input with regard to what topics are you interested in. And John will remember this. We did some of those when we were at Buffalo. We did the school budget. MSBA came and did that one. I was trying to think what else. Roles and Responsibilities and Sunshine Law are always two good ones, but they will give you lots of lists of topics, and boards I have found are pretty receptive to doing that and pretty good. Everybody does have to bring their calendar, and we try to plan a night when everyone can come, and I've had pretty good results with that, actually.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you. The last question I had to do with, I guess more of a personal question as far as your choices and where you are. I mean, you, from what I got, you taught for 13 years in the school district in which you graduated, and then you were an elementary principal in that same school. And even you even became superintendent there, right?
Correct. Yeah, the first 20 years I spent primarily in the Boerne School District as teacher, principal, and superintendent. I was there as a superintendent for 5 years before I moved to Buffalo.
So, right. So I guess my question is, and it comes from, someone who's been in the same school district for 16 years and would like to step into administration at some point. And, and I don't know if there was a clear-cut time for you that you felt like you needed to make a break from the school district that you had spent much of your life in, or just opportunities that you couldn't pass up, or just kind of talk about those decisions as far as how you felt about moving schools and if it was positive or how you came to that decision.
Very good question. And I can tell you that moving up within a system, especially if it is your hometown, can be very challenging and very difficult, and that oftentimes I think we're probably better off to go away from our home school district and have those experiences and then later on either come back, because I will tell you that it has been a totally different kind of experience. I love Boerne. I thought nobody would love Boerne better than I did, but I did not realize until I got away from there how different things were. I was a much better superintendent, probably would have been a much better principal in a different district than my hometown, because people who have known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper they will treat you differently, and it's much harder when you've known folks than it is when you go to, I came over to Buffalo, and it's the same way here in Kabul. I was absolutely related to no one. Did not know anybody. Thank the Lord he placed John Turner with me at Buffalo, because that first year I had no network over here, and he was so gracious to take me, went to every meeting with me, introduced me to everybody he knew, having been from Southwest Missouri. But it was easier for me to make those tough decisions and to do my job in a district where I had not grown up and did not know everyone, and everyone did not know me. And I never dreamed, I really thought when I took the superintendent's job at Boerne that I would be there until I retired. And so when my daughter, there were some draws for me to move from the district. One of those, I have an only child, a daughter who is married and has 2 wonderful grandsons now. In Clinton, and so she started saying, "Mom, why don't you move closer, and why don't you come over this side of the state?" And there were some things going on at Boerne with my local board that the stress was extremely high, and I wasn't handling it very well, and it was just time. It was probably time a year before I moved for me to make that change, and it was very positive for a lot of reasons. It got me closer to my daughter, living there in Buffalo with she being in Clinton, and I got to be close when she was having both of those babies. And so that was a real positive for me, and it was a good move for me to go to Buffalo. And it was a great opportunity. It was an increase in pay, and it was totally new experience for me to be outside my comfort zone, outside of my my hometown. But it was good, and I would encourage folks to look outside especially if it's somewhere where you've lived and worked. Sometimes it's very hard to become a supervisor over folks that have been your colleagues. You know, I did it. I'm not sure how well I did it. It's doable, and it can be very positive, and I had lots of good experiences there in Boerne, don't get me wrong. But I can see now that I've stepped outside of that, that it is a totally different experience to step outside that, and far easier to do your job without those hometown ties.
That's good information. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Mindy, what questions do you have?
I think that you have given us some good insight on how you work within the community and with your board to build those relationships, and how important it is to network and get out and meet people. How do you build those relationships with the people inside your district? As a superintendent in Buffalo when you were new there, or now in Kabul, what do you do within your building to build those relationships with your administrators and with your teachers and support staff?
Mm-hmm. Very good question, and a very important part of your job as a superintendent or even as a building administrator. I think the best way is to get out and have those face-to-face meetings with people. And that can be very informal. It can be as little as sharing some coffee in the workroom before school starts, or having lunch in the cafeteria as the staff and the students are eating lunch. And again, that visibility factor where you are out and about. Did that some in Buffalo, maybe done a better job of that, and maybe it's just the size of the school district here in Kabul. But I think sometimes when you get in the superintendency, it's easy to get closeted away in your office and get caught up in the paperwork managerial stuff. And so it's the same way as a building principal, actually scheduling time on your calendar when you are out and about among the masses. And my favorite part of my day as a superintendent is when I am out and about in the buildings, in the classrooms, and even at the activities at night. It's a great way for me to get to know not just students but also their parents and other people in the community that attend those events. I think it's equally important to have that shared leadership with your building folks. From an administrative perspective, I like to meet every week or two with my building principals, my admin team, so that we can plan and share ideas. I typically learn way more from them than they will ever take away from me, I'm quite certain. And so I think having something regularly scheduled with your admin team is important. We don't meet every single Monday afternoon, but we meet a lot of Mondays during the school year according to what's going on. And that gives, they help develop that agenda. And I think that's invaluable, especially when you're new to a district. So I think also I attend, we have really revved up our professional development committee and our technology committee. Those were things that had kind of deteriorated in the district, and so we've tried to make those opportunities available so that the staff has an active voice in what's going on. And last year, for the first time in a long time, our PD committee actually planned some of our in-service days. They had not been real involved in that in recent years, and I think that's been a morale booster. And I have absolute confidence in those folks, you know, doing surveys to find out what the needs of your staff are, and then developing those opportunities and making those resources available to meet the needs of the staff is so very important. And I think that's the way you build a relationship with your staff, is allowing them to have a voice and to have that input and to participate. You know, I put on my pants the same way every morning that they do, and just because I'm the superintendent doesn't make me any more knowledgeable or special than any of them. And so I try to send that message. My philosophy is the teacher is where the rubber meets the road. They're the most important, they're the decisive element in that classroom. And I tell the principals that their jobs as evaluators, that's the most important thing that they do every day, and it's the most direct impact they have on instruction. And so I encourage them also we set some goals as far as how many classroom visits we're going to make, and then this year I'll be challenging them to go above and beyond that. I don't think that you can have too much information, and I don't think that you'll ever get a real view of what's going on in your school district without being out and about and visiting those classrooms and being there physically. So those are some of the ways that I can think of to build those relationships with your staff inside. And I think recognizing that your classified staff is equally as important as your certified staff. Sometimes that those are the folks who support instruction. You know, I tell the bus drivers they're the first people that our kids see connected to the school district in the morning, and they're the last ones that that we see. And so I like to ride bus routes. I've already done some of that. I didn't get to all of them last year, but I plan on continuing that. And they're really surprised when they see me show up to ride a bus route, John. That was kind of new, I think. But again, there's no greater information in getting to know your students than knowing where they live. And sometimes that's a shocker. So I think, I tell the cooks we couldn't do our job in educating them if you didn't help us feed them. And we certainly couldn't educate them if we didn't have clean, well-maintained buildings. I tell our custodians that. So I think as often as I can, I visit not just in the classrooms with the teachers and the students, but also expressing appreciation and gratitude to, there's no greater compliment than telling someone you appreciate what they do. And it takes all of us are equally important in accomplishing good educational programs for kids.
Thank you. I think I have one final question, and with you being a leader in education for almost 30 years now, Angela and I are on the phone or with you, and we are aspiring administrators, possibly superintendents one day. What are some words of advice that you could give to us as we begin maybe looking for positions or changing roles within our district? What, I guess, woman to woman, what's some advice that you have for us?
Probably three pieces of advice that I would give you ladies as you aspire to be administrators. Number one, and most importantly, stay true to yourself. Be yourself and stay true to that, and things will work out. Sometimes you'll wonder if they're going to work out, but they will. I think first and foremost, having a strong faith that you can rely on and support in that way outside of the school district is important. And so stay true to yourself and to your values and ethics, and everything else will fall into place if you do that. Secondly, I already shared this with you. Always remember that the sum of the strengths of your team far outweighs any individual weaknesses. So hire good people and then get out of their way and let them do their job. I think sometimes as leaders we think we have to do everything ourselves and we don't want to delegate, and that's a big mistake. There are a lot of talented people in the field, people who are far more talented and much smarter than I am, and you can never be afraid to, let them loose and watch them grow. That's part of the joy of being an administrator when you work with teachers and you work with building principals, is watching them grow and change, and any part you can have in making that happen is truly a reward of the job. And then I think thirdly, you need to recognize as an administrator the political nature of the job. And probably, if you look at the statistics, especially for superintendents, it's not unusual 3 to 5 years and it's turning over and you're moving somewhere else. Whether that's good or bad, that's the reality of the job. And it was, I had the former superintendent when I took the job at Bernie said, "You'll make a great superintendent, but you just need to remember that probably you'll be moving on and you won't stay here. The days of when superintendents stayed, 25 years, the gentleman was there when I was growing up at Bernie, stayed over 25 years. And that's very rare in this day and time. And so I would tell you to intend on being mobile and not to be afraid of that. In fact, I think that's one of the perks of the job. There is a point that, and you'll know when that point is, that it's time to move on and look at something new and different. And I think sometimes, especially if we've taught and worked in the same district for a lot of years, that we fail to recognize that. So keep that in mind. You might be one of the lucky ones, and you might be one of those that do stay for years and years, either as a building principal or as a superintendent. But you never know what opportunities are going to come your way. So never say never. I never thought I'd be a superintendent. I thought I'd be a building principal a whole lot longer, and didn't work out that way. But I've loved every second of it. I still love my wish for you is that every morning when you get up, you still look forward to going to work. And when it reaches the point that you don't look forward to going to work, then it's time to get out and do something else, because it's too important of a job otherwise.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
Robin, I've forgotten how much I miss hearing your voice. So.
And yours as well. It's always a pleasure to visit with you. And I still haven't, by the way, heard anything about the 21st Century Grant. I emailed Kim last week. She said end of July, so I'm sitting on pins and needles here.
Well,
waiting to hear.
Ironically, while you've been talking here, I just got an email from Kim Wolf. As it said, they just got the award notification yesterday from the federal government, so that they know now that they've got money that they can award. And she said that they should be able to. They're not going to be able to meet their end of July deadline probably, but it would be early next week. So
good. Maybe we'll know soon. I had thought we would know like by mid-July. Sometimes we've known after the 4th, but
well, apparently they hadn't.
I guess they've been waiting on their award.
They hadn't gotten the formal letter yet from the U.S. Department of Ed that said they had money to allocate or to spend yet, but apparently they just got. In fact, the note just says we just got that yesterday. We are now taking the next steps on announcing the award, so maybe early next week.
Cool. Anyway. All right. I'll be ready. I'll be ready.
What we're talking about, but Robin and I got together and did a late night grant writing session. Okay, thank you, Robin.
Some people will do anything for a couple $100,000, won't they, John?
Yes, we'll sit there and put something on paper for it, won't we? Okay, Robin. Well, thanks a million for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. You take care, and I'll talk with you again soon. Good luck, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So, let's see. And I will just tell you, ladies, there is no sweeter soul on the face of the earth than Robin Ritchie. Let me tell you, you work next door to someone for 5 years, and you get to see them at their best and at their worst, and I've never seen Robin even get close to below average. He even went under a mountain of stress and craziness and weird activities of board members and staff members and things like that. She is always just as cool as a cucumber, just as smooth. And this is too much information, Robin, but you just don't have to work with people like Robin very long to realize that their values are very much in them, and their actions are based on values. And so you never have to worry about her doing something that's politically expedient, or you never have to worry about her. Her values are so deeply embedded in what's good for kids and what's the real mission of education, and her heart is so good that you never have to worry about squirrely activity. And I've had to work with a number of superintendents that sometimes you always had to worry about that. I've seen her fight some really wonderful battles. And I asked her one time, I said, why are you continuing to fight this battle? And she said, I don't feel like it's a battle because I know it's what's right. And so she just always had that feeling, and that And it was very comforting to work with Robin Ritchie because, like I said, you just knew that her heart and her mind were in the right place. And you don't get a smarter person than Robin either. Man, she can remember. I can't remember what I had for breakfast 2 hours ago. Robin can remember. She's unbelievable. And she's a great mentor too to anybody. So down the road, if you ever need, she's one I would definitely advise that we visit with because she's a great one. So, well, let's get back here and try to wrap this thing up because I know that we're probably not going to get through as much today as I wanted to, but that's okay. We'll wrap some of it up next week, but let me get through just a little bit more here so we can sort of understand this basic concept. And David Kelly, again, from the gentleman from IDEO. And by the way, if you're interested in that and seeing how that organization works, it's really fascinating. And by the way, it's not just happenstance I bring. Even in the way Robin talks, maybe you can hear her stage 4 in her, and that is true, true, true. Robin will walk down the hall and she will see someone that is, I know this sounds terrible, but the lowest on the hierarchy of the school district. It'll be a custodian or it'll be a teacher aide or whatever. And the interaction she has with those people, when we get to stage 4, we're trying to work in triads at least. We're not trying to work one-on-one, can tend to be the home of stage 3 people. But in Robin's case, it's not. But Robin is one of the few people that will go down the hallway and talk to a custodian. And she'll ask a custodian, what can we do to help kids learn more? I mean, she asks everybody the same set of questions and wants to sincerely have their input. And I know that when we did have administrative meetings, while we did not have, when we have those administrative meetings, she has them on Mondays there. I think we did them on Mondays in Buffalo too, is that we were just administrators from all the buildings sitting around the table, and we didn't have other voices around the table, but Robin was always a great example to bring in other voices that she'd heard from questions. She would always bring up and say, but the custodians feel that this, whatever. She was always very good about bringing in a diverse group. Probably would have been a little bit better if we'd had more diverse representation in the room at the time rather than just talking to them outside and bringing them back in. That tends to be a hub and spoke type of mentality that might lead you to believe that Robin is a stage 3 person, but trust me, she's not. It's just we may not have gotten to the skill level where we're bringing these people in to get that dynamic that David Kelly has at IDEO. But anyway, my point on that is that he's got a great TED talk on, if you're a TED type person, he's got a number of YouTube videos, either from the 60-minute interview or other interviews, where you can sort of see how that organization works, where they're bringing people around, concentrating on an idea. And I think really the most impressive part is how they, like I said, build on each other's ideas. There's a video on there related to that they were designing a better shopping cart. And I think what's interesting to me is to watch all these diverse group. Like I said, they'll have an attorney there. They'll have an immigrant from another country. They'll have all these different diverse people sitting around the table talking about a shopping cart, and nobody has real knowledge about how to design a shopping cart other than their own personal experience. And so when I watch that and see them talk, I always think about that from an educational setting, about how we could have that same kind of dialogue about how we're more powerful as a school, or how we're more powerful in designing an instructional environment for kids. And so anyway, but it's an interesting dynamic. But here, David Kelly talking about from the book, we started with 10 of my friends, and all but one of them are still here 30 years later. It was more about building a culture than to do design, and they do design work there. So it's more about the culture. We focused on what we cared about. The feeling is we were and are all in it together. And I think sometimes as school leaders, that's what, and I know it's hard because you've always got members of your staff that you sit there and think, how did this person ever get hired to work in a school? And something has changed in their life. You come in, you're the new guy, you've only been there a few years, and this teacher's been here 15, 20 years, and you're sitting there, and you can see no way that person would have ever gotten into the school business. First of all, they may appear to dislike kids, or they may appear to dislike the job of teaching, or they may appear to dislike working with other people. Anyway, you go through and you see these people. And so sometimes these great leaders are the ones that can come back in and remind these people that got into the education business for whatever reason, why they were there. These people at one time in their career obviously had that spark, or they would have never gone to all the work to go get their certification or or their teaching degree or their administrative degree. And so they had that at one time. So how do we get that back into them? And David Kelly's quote there about we focused about what we cared about. And I can't imagine people would have gone into education if they didn't care about kids. So sometimes we've got to refocus them on that dynamic in order to get to a stage 4 culture. How do we build a we're great culture, that collaborative culture that we're trying to look for? And IDEO was probably created by stage 4 people to start with. So it's a different dynamic than what we're used to in education, and that this David Kelly, he was a highly successful designer, but he decided he wanted to go a new way. And so he basically brought probably other stage 4 people with him. So he brought people that were comfortable working in this collaborative environment. As new administrators that are coming into a school district new, we don't get the choice of saying, well, let's fire everybody and I get to hire people that can work in a stage 4 climate. So it may not be practical with us as leaders to say, well, we've got to come into a district or a building that already has staff there. We don't get to model this just based on the people I want to start my new business with. So how does that impact us as teachers? Well, people within a group, sometimes they try, so basically, and I've written this out more, but basically you're in a position of where you've got to come into a culture that already exists and try to identify those people that are at stage 3, probably late stage 3, and there may already be a collaborative culture there in some areas. There may already be a stage 4 tribe as some part of your organization, but you're probably going to try to see if there's a stage 4 part of your organization and look for those people, late stage 3 people, I'm great, you're not type people, and try to form this out of an organization that's already created. And so identifying those people that would fit into this culture. And to be candid with you, reading towards the chapter of the book, at the end of the book, is that you're going to do this one by one by one. You're not going to say, we're just going to start a stage 4 organization. And you're going to do it by pulling up the 2s to make them 3s and 3s to make them 4s. But you've got to get to a start here where we've got a group that can be a model of excellence for the group, a group that can see how this teamwork dynamic works and how it can be successful in solving problems. And so that's sort of where we're going at here in the education business, is not only bringing people up, but once we arrive at an organization, identifying those people that are already at stage 4 or late stage 3 and try to make them an example of how this collaborative culture can work. Okay. Another point there from David Kelly in the book is when you get a good culture going, it's hard to ruin. When you get a bad culture, it's hard to fix. And so depending contextually about the school district you're in, if you're in a school that has a good culture, and that means that people get along, they like each other, they may not be working collaboratively, but they're comfortable and they like being there, well, that's obviously going to be much easier to instill this vision of collaboration and working through processes in a collaborative nature. That's obviously going to be much easier to do than if you've got a bad culture where people don't like working there. They're trying to look for a job at a new school district. They're trying to move on. That's going to be harder to fix as far as a dynamic. And it sounds simple, but many times as school administrators, unfortunately, it's the hard ones that we get into. That's the reason they're vacant. People that are in good cultures and keeping it going, they rarely leave. To be very candid with you, Robin and I probably would have gone 30 years at Buffalo, and Robin probably would have retired from Buffalo too. But there were a number of school board members on that board that we just had opportunities that made it easier to move on than to try to fix that culture. That's being far too candid. I mean, if I was a noble person, I would have said, we would have stayed there and said, we're going to fix this. But I was too close to retirement, and Robin's older than I am. She already could have retired. And opportunities come up and you move on. And that's the practical way things work. And so very rarely as a school administrator are you going to go to a school that is already in bloom because people tend to not leave it. Now, sometimes they do, because they may have been promoted to the district. So you may get a wonderful building principalship because the principal that was there that helped create that climate has been moved up in the organization. And sometimes you'll get retirements. You know, people leave an outstanding, blooming organization, collaborative stage 4 organization because they're retiring and that. But more times than not, the reason there's a vacancy and the reason you've been hired is because someone has moved, either because the organization was had a culture problem, or they've been removed and they didn't want to leave, and basically their contracts weren't renewed. And so again, we've got to just assume that in many cases we're going to go into a culture that's going to be hard to fix because it was there when we got there. Okay. One of the technical notes that they had on Stage 4 tribes there was that Stage 4 tribes pay almost no attention to organizational boundaries. Now that's hard for, we didn't get into this a lot, but Bowman and Deal always talk about the structural frame of people's minds of looking at organizations. And administrators by our nature are very structural. It's the tradition in educational administration that you have a superintendent that tells the principal what to do and the principal tells what the teachers do. That's traditional structural organization of a school district. And one of the reasons I think that this concept of tribal leadership, or these issues about creating organizations that's very collaborative, is a little different, is because they pay no attention to organizational boundaries. You know, when we have these discussions about way we're solving problems, it doesn't matter that you're the assistant principal and that you're a teacher and that you're an aide when we're contributing ideas about how to make our culture better. We're all on equal footing. It's the organizational boundaries are important. We have the bus drivers in. We have the maintenance people in. We have the food service people in. We've got the teachers in. It's not people in silos. It's everybody in together. And some people are very uncomfortable in working in that way. But it is part of a Stage 4 culture that we pay no attention to organizational boundaries. And what matters is contribution, not whether people are even regular full-time employees. And so, you know, I know school districts that intentionally have people that they'll bring in parents that are not employees of the district as part of discussion groups on issues, or they bring in students and they're part of the discussion group on this. Not, you know, and that helps the dynamic of that collaborative culture. Okay. And then another technical note is that how does Stage 4 look? It tends to people tend to meet in at least teams of 3. Okay, that's interesting. We'll talk a little bit more about that maybe on Thursday. But when you get to Stage 4, it's not just dyads. It's not one person meeting with one person, because again, that tends to create a Stage 3 environment where you have a hub and spoke. But we're trying to meet in 3s. We're trying to network. We're trying to triangulate and make sure it's an environment of where it doesn't just have to be you talk to me, but we're trying to triangulate. So teams tend to meet at least in groups of 3. Leaders tend to give credit and keep blame. It's an interesting concept as a school leader. They support, you get support from the entire team during training. And that's something that I really wanted to talk about. In fact, this may be a good place to start, and we'll pick up on Thursday, is that how do we train rookie teachers in our school district, or how do we do teacher induction for new teachers in our school district? And do those new teachers into our school district feel support from the entire team? Or are they just working with a mentor? And if they're working with a mentor, at best, we're going for Stage 3, because that's that dyad development thing. And that's not necessarily bad, but we can do better. And to get our organization where we want it to be is that when those new teachers or new employees of our district come in, we want them to feel the support of all the team. And that doesn't mean we all gather together and hug each other and sing Kumbaya. That really means that we have a system that allows support for these new teachers from every angle, and part of making them part of the tribe. Our team is great, and we're working together. It's not just one-on-one with mentorship and things like that. And then leaders demonstrate interest in the tribe, not in self, in that they are there. That it's not just they're talking about we, our, but they're actually demonstrating it. That it's not about me, it's about our, it's about us, it's about we. Robin was a good example of that. She used to always talk about that. She said, I want to make sure that if something would happen to me, the next day school will go along fine. that it's part of it's not about me, it's about us and and that's very much a part of the dynamic. Well, I tell you what, I know you're all worn out, and I know Angela's got a meeting to go to, and I tell you what, some of this we're going to wrap up today, but I'm not going to get to it today. We'll just wrap it up on Thursday. Do we have any questions here before we stop that we can think of, and we'll wrap up with everything on Thursday?
I have one question because I'm here in not Carthage, Springfield. In fact, at the University Plaza, because our conference is at the Expo Center. So I'm literally just a couple of blocks down.
Uh-huh.
Would it work for me to venture up sometime in the next couple of days while I'm here to do the evaluation? Do you think anyone's there?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, Judy's there. Yeah, Judy Campbell would be there. Great.
I might just do that if that's okay, and then tell her that she doesn't have to worry about mailing.
That's great. That would be. And do you know who Judy Campbell is? Do you know where our offices are?
I know where your offices are, and I will find Judy.
Okay, Judy's she's the front. Well, when you walk in the doors, they've got Morgan, who's the first one, but Morgan can and then you walk in towards like you're going to my office, and Judy is the secretary. Judy is the longest serving employee of Missouri State University. I think she's been with Missouri State for like 46 years. And I'm just saying that because you can tell if you're talking to a 20-year-old. It ain't Judy. Judy's not old, but she's been there 46 years. So, but yeah, that would be great. If you could go by and fill out those 2 evaluations for Judy, that would save her having to mail it for you. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else, Mindy? Can you think of anything? Okie doke. Well, then I'm gonna stop this recording and I'm gonna share it with.